Hey everyone, I'm back for some more block. This time we're looking at a blue-red invisible Stalker deck, which, as you can probably surmise, the goal is to play an invisible Stalker and then enchant it with a Spectral Flight and then kill them. And this clock is usually not quick enough by itself, so you support it with various one-drops like Stromkirk Noble, which is the best in the format currently, because of all the humans. Delver of Secrets, which is a might inconsistent, but we try and play enough burn spells to help flip them. The burn spells is also how you finish off your opponent. So with dissipates to back up your Snapcaster Mage, just in case they have to find some way to interact with it, which are usually few in this format. There's Rolling Trembler, Liliana, and Tribute to Hunger off the top of my head, and Blasphemous Act, I guess, but they usually don't get to that much mana before you kill them. But if anything could interact with your Snapcaster Mage, your Stalker, you just dissipate it. And the Snapcaster Mage is just an extension of all the burn spells and the dissipates. The one-drop removal spells, usually for their opposing creatures, you try not to die while you kill them. The Desperate Ravings is relatively new addition. I wanted to play with it because some hands you get flooded, and others you get... It's there to smooth your draws, basically. This deck isn't the most consistent of decks. It's not like Boros or Green-White, where you just have a bunch of creatures and you smash face in. You have to have specific draws, like you have to have a one-drop, or you have to have a Stalker and a Spectral Flight. And the reason I'm only playing Spectral Flights is because I tried a lot of equipment and some curiosities, but you get run into the problem where you're just drawing a bunch of enchantments and no creatures, or the opposite. Well, the opposite's not usually... Drawing creatures is not usually bad, but all the enchantment hands are just very bad. And the Spectral Flight is... I cut this once and it was a mistake. It's the only way you can afford to play around Rolling Trembler, which is one of the few cards that people play that actually get your Invisible Stalkers. So you can't just, like, Butcher's Cleaver, equip your Stalker, and then be immune to Rolling Trembler like you can with Spectral Flight. So that's why we're playing Spectral Flight instead of, like, Silver Inlaid Dagger or Butcher's Cleaver. Though I do have some cleavers in the sideboard, which we'll get to later. But the Desperate Ravings are there, just smooth draws, in case you need to find burn spells or creatures to kill them with. The Stitch Drakes are more defensive than offensive. The decks that this deck has troubles with usually is tokens. They can outrace you, like Midnight Haunting decks. And so the Stitch Drakes blocks all the Intangible Virtue powered tokens. And even then, it's just a big body you can block creatures with, and eventually it'll kill them on its own, because it's got 3 power. And that's the main deck. I think I mentioned that Snapcaster Mage is just extensions of your other spells. And the mana base favors red, because you want to have the Stromkirk Noble on turn 1, and then have enough to Flashback Devil's Play. Whereas the blue, you need for only Delver, which isn't the best on turn. If you have a Delver on turn 1, you're good. But if you have the choice between Delver and Noble on turn 1, you're always going to play Noble. Because the Delver might not flip on turn 1, whereas the Noble will always get powered up. The board is a little project. I'm not sure the exact configuration, so I'm trying a bunch of different things. I copied most of this list from a daily. It's similar to my list, and I liked it a bunch, so I think the big change I made was Falkenrath Nobles in the board. Another problem deck is, actually probably the biggest problem deck, is Dredge, or the Splinterfright deck. Because you're playing Burn, basically. You're a Burn deck. So they're not of the bones that gain them 20-some life. You just can't compete with that. So you need to bring in some fast clock that'll establish itself that can't be overrun by their ground pounders. And so that's what Nobles, or Marauders, is for. You slam it on turn 5 and they're dead in 4 hits. And they have to, occasionally you'll get to the... Even if they have the Knot of the Bone, they'll be forced into situations where they have to gnaw to stay alive instead of developing their board. So you just keep pounding in with the Marauders, which keeps getting bigger, and their Knot of Bones just don't matter as much anymore. And hopefully you draw Dissipate for one of them, and that usually kills them. And for also the Dredge matchup, I have Blasphemous Act and Rolling Tremblers, which kill the Spider Spawnings tokens made by, or the Spider Spawning tokens, so Marauders can get in. And also Silent Departure, because that's very good against their Kethage Cage Breakers and their Splinterfrights themselves. I have Butcher's Cleaver for aggro decks, especially the red ones like Boros that bring in burn. You just want to hit them a few times so you can outrace them. And I also sometimes run it against control, because while Spectral Flight is good and all, it's a card disadvantage if you're forced to put it on a noble and they just sever it. So I like having a Butcher's Cleaver to throw down on the battlefield, and I don't like lose anything from it if they kill my creature. I don't lose the Butcher's Cleaver. I can just equip it to the next guy I draw. And the Witchbane Orbs are also for control, though I have sighted in against the Mirror because Devil's Play is a huge part of the block metagame. And also it stops Tribute to Hunger and Liliana against control decks. And that's the deck. What we're going to do now is throw it into a couple of two-mans, because it's fairly last minute. I had some logistic issues. I left my power cord in a relative's house over holidays, so Daily's not firing until like 1 o'clock a.m. today. So I'm just going to do a couple two-mans to display the deck, and I'll see you there.